Come to me. Come to me. Hear my call. Come to me. Professor, my dreams grow darker. Does evil come from within us? Or from beyond?
It's coming.
He is coming.
He is coming to us.
He's coming.
Who is coming to you, my child? We are here encountering the vampire. Nosferatu.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. It's our first post-Christmas episode we've done for Fresh Cuts in a long time. With me, as always, it's Mr. Venom.
Greetings and salutations, Romanian bloodsuckers. Yes, I'm doing pretty well. How you doing, Mike? And how was your holiday?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's the final day of having 5 days off in a row, so trying to wake up to or not wake up, but realize that I do need to make sure my alarm's set tomorrow for work. So, but other than that, yeah, it's been nice and relaxing. So, how about you, Venom?
Same, quiet. Mrs. Venom and I, all our family is back east, so if we don't make it back east for Christmas, it ends up just being a very quiet Christmas day. I went to the movies in the morning to see today's movie, obviously, while Mrs. Venom was sleeping, as she works nights. So, and then in the evening, I made a nice pot roast and we opened presents. And like I said, it's a pretty quiet, dull holiday whenever we don't make it back home.
Cool. All right. Also with us is Donna Nelly. How are you, and how was your holiday?
Not bad. Kind of ran into a rather unfortunate situation here in that we lost power Christmas Eve. So that was fun. There was a transformer that blew and knocked everything off of us for 2 days, I think.
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, it knocked everything off. Power, internet, TV, phones, everything. And that was the 24th, I might add. So yeah, Christmas Day with no heating, no electricity, no lights. That was something. Kind of odd, kind of eerie, something that not entirely sure I want to go through again. But I mean, at least the presents were fun. Got a bunch of movies, got a couple of sleeping equipment, and something that Venom, I think you're going to be kind of shocked to hear. I ended up getting a Godzilla Chia Pet.
Oh, are you effing kidding me? I opened a Godzilla Chia Pet on Christmas morning.
I got one.
That's awesome.
Yep, I got one. I'm on. I just put the water in last night, so this is officially day one.
I haven't actually done mine yet, but I'm looking forward to it. I may do it later today, but yeah, haven't had a chance.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's the one I got.
Yeah.
I didn't know that those things still were available. When I pulled it open, I was like, I mean, half of me was kind of like stunned because it was like my parents were, oh, you're going to get something really, kind of goofy and weird and off the wall and you're not going to expect it. And it's like, Okay, yeah. Well, what could it possibly be? And then I saw it, and the first thing I opened was the top of it, so it said Chia Pet on it, and I was like, what the hell? They still make these things? Because I haven't seen commercials for them in like 5, 6, 7 years, and it's like I almost kind of like forgot about them. And then I finished wrapping it, and then I saw the kanji, and I was like, oh my god, Godzilla. And my parents were like, wait, you know it's Godzilla? And it's like, oh yeah, I know his kanji, I know what his characters are. So it was kind of cool that yeah, as soon as I pulled it open and I saw the symbols on there, I was like, oh, I know what it is. So yeah.
But I didn't even ask Mrs. Venom where she found it, because it's not something I asked for. So she must have found it somewhere and just grabbed it. So yeah. Twinsies.
Nice. Cool. Yeah. I mean, if you want to follow along, maybe we can actually be, bush buddies, as unconventional as that sounds. As soon as they said that, I was like, oh god.
All right, that needs to be a T-shirt right now. Let's be
listeners, do not use your imagination on that.
Yeah, as soon as it left my mouth, I was like, oh fuck.
I love it.
Yeah. I mean, that made up for it, but still, kind of good with the bad. I mean, the movies were good. The Godzilla Chia Pet was awesome. No electricity for 2 days. I mean, that was kind of a bummer, but yeah. Besides that, pretty fun and relatively uneventful. I can't say it was completely, but I mean, you know what I mean.
Yep, I get it. So yeah, we are recording this during a time period we're usually off prepping for the top 10 show. But we had already made the decision. I believe we announced on the last episode that since Nosferatu is a huge release, we felt that we should probably do an episode on it. So we are back from our couple week break to do this episode. And then I think if we're not looking to have any gaps, then it would be the following week that we'll do the top 10 show, but we'll get that figured out soon. And we are going to do this episode kind of just like one big segment of spoiler-filled discussions, just because it's a Nosferatu movie it stays close enough to like the story everyone's familiar with that there's not a lot of spoilers to be discussed. The most spoiler territory-esque we can get into is like maybe certain design choices or filming mythologies or those things specific, but they're not really story spoilers, so there's not real reason to like warn everyone or break it up into general thoughts versus spoilers for this specific episode. But yeah, with that said, I mean, I already said, and everyone already knows, we're doing Nosferatu 2024. I'll read the synopsis of IMDb just for the hell of it. A gothic tale of obsession between a haunted young woman and the terrifying vampire infatuated with her, causing untold horror in its wake. This film, directed by Eggers, he is listed as one of the writers as well. Of course, credit to Bram Stoker for the source material here. Lily Rose Depp and Bill Skarsgård. Obviously, William Dafoe is also in this movie and memorable as always. But more on that as we get into it. So I'll start us off with general thoughts out of habit, but really, Venom, what did you think of Nosferatu 2024?
I have two very distinct opinions about this movie. One is a very obvious one, and then the other one might be a little bit surprising to some people. But the first one, I'm going to go with the obvious one first. Robert Eggers is an absolute fucking master of cinema. His preparation, his research, his level of authenticity in his movies is fucking second to none. just doing some research on this particular picture and looking at some of the research that he did. I mean, he actually read countless volumes of Romanian folklore, including the Solo Manare, stories about folk musicians who animated corpses with demonic forces. He also incorporated elements of this into the movie. Even the 7-pointed stars that you see on Count Orlok's seal and coffin are authentic to Romanian nobility. The design of Nosferatu, aside from Bill Skarsgård's performance, which I'll get into in a little bit, the design of Nosferatu is incredibly similar to what Romanian nobility looked like at the time. So I've heard a lot of people kind of saying that they're not the biggest fans of this design because it kind of veers away from the traditional look. Now, granted, we haven't had a whole lot of Nosferatu movies, but obviously with the addition of like 1979 Salem Lot, and Mr. Barlow and that one looking very similar to Nosferatu. I know kind of a lot of people kind of include that in that echelon, but I kind of look at this like Michael Dougherty's Krampus. If you guys remember, Michael Dougherty drastically changed the design of the classic Krampus, and I ended up loving it. I love that movie. I love the design of that Krampus. Yes, it has similarities to the classic demonic long tongue design that we've all grown up with. And it's the same thing with this movie. We've got the Mr. Barlow, Count Orlok style vampire that we're familiar with for over 100 years now, 103 years to be exact. But then he does a redesign that makes sense since it's based on actual authentic Romanian nobility. It just 100% makes sense. And then, man, I mean, if you didn't tell me that was Bill Skarsgård, I never in a million fucking years would have ever guessed that was him. The voice, the mannerisms, the way that he walks, the way that he carries himself. I mean, that is not Bill Skarsgård. I'm so convinced that's not Skarsgård on screen. They did such an amazing job of hiding him. Like even with Pennywise, you can tell under the makeup that's Skarsgård. You can, see the basic structure of the face is there. This one, so incredibly different. So bravo to the makeup effects team here and just completely making it seem like Bill Skarsgård is not in this movie. I'm just so convinced that's someone else under there. So bravo to them. I mean, what can we say about the atmosphere and just the gothic element of this movie? That's the ultimate triumph of this movie, is this atmosphere. Every single frame of this movie could be hung on a wall. It's a goddamn work of art. I'm sitting in the theater both times that I went to see it, and I'm in absolute awe of some of these shots that Eggers is putting together. The shot of Thomas at the crossroads in the silhouette light. Oh, holy crap. Just the shots of the castle of Castle Orlok in the distance. Just, oh my God, I just can't get over everything. And obviously, when you know a little bit about the making of this movie, the fact that it took Robert Eggers over 10 years to make this thing, it makes sense. I mean, when you take that long to make a film, you can be meticulous with your research. You can be meticulous with your designs, sound design, set design, costume design. You can be meticulous with all of it. And I mean, obviously, most directors don't have the luxury of taking 10 years to make a movie. And obviously, that wasn't the plan. This movie was supposed to be Robert Eggers' second movie. Right after, we basically knew right after The Witch became a success that he was working on Nosferatu. But because of the constant studio delays and everything else, I think it benefits the movie because Robert Eggers now that he's made, before Nosferatu, he made 3 successful movies. So now studios know he's the director that you can trust, that you could just give him free reign and he's going to give you something amazing. Also, the budgets. I mean, if he would have made this movie 10 years ago, it wouldn't have had a fraction of the budget that we ended up getting for this one. And maybe we suffer. Maybe the set design suffers a little bit. Maybe some of the effects suffer. Maybe the design of Count Orlok suffers. I don't know. But just from a technical standpoint, this movie is an absolute 10 out of 10. It is a fucking masterpiece. Like I said, every frame is a work of art. Every performance is stellar. Even Willem Dafoe, who sometimes gets a little over the top, still in a fucking amazing performance. I mean, he might be my new favorite Van Helsing / Von Frank. Or Von Frank, excuse me. But yeah, holy shit, that performance was stellar. Even Aaron Taylor Johnson as Harding, as Thomas's friend, the ship magnate Harding. Another great performance from him. Just yeah, and then Lily Depp. I mean, holy shit! This is the closest thing to Isabella Adjani's performance in Possession that I've seen since then. I can't get over there are contortions that she does in this movie that make no sense whatsoever. Maybe they're CG assisted, but for the most part she's doing them. She's doing very, very similar to Jennifer Carpenter in The Exorcism of Emily Rose, how she was physically doing all of those contortions herself. So, but then there is one thing that I am going to knock the film for, and this is the other element of the film that I was talking about. The first one, Robert Eggers, just stellar filmmaking. The second one, I don't like that this is just I don't want to say shot for shot, but a scene for scene remake of both the original Nosferatu and then Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1993, which I think was directed by Coppola, right? Coppola or De Palma? It was one of those Italian guys. Coppola, thank you. And I know that's kind of been the standard for Dracula stories basically since that movie's come out. And man, I really, really wanted to see Robert Eggers make this story his own. And he did stylistically, in the sense of how he filmed it, the set design, the sound design, all of that. But I really wanted to see him change this story a little bit, because my biggest knock with Nosferatu is that it is an unofficial adaptation of Dracula. And we've got a slew of official adaptations of Dracula. I don't need another unofficial remake of, Bram Stoker's Dracula. So I really wish that Robert would have been a little bit more over the top with it. Maybe have a little bit more fun with it. Maybe throw a little gore in there, because Nosferatu's never really been that bloody a vampire movie. I mean, it's a fairly bloodless vampire movie, in all honesty. We get a little bit of blood here and there, but nothing compared to like what we got in 93 from Coppola with Bram Stoker's Dracula. So I really would have liked to have seen Eggers just done something different so that this movie doesn't feel like it's just a rehash of the original. But at the same time, as I was driving home from the theater on the second time, I start to realize that, well, wait a minute. If the original Nosferatu film from 1922 was an unofficial, unlicensed adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula, then I guess it kind of makes sense that this movie is an unofficial remake of the 1993 film. I'm not sure if that was a purposeful choice by Robert Eggers, that he kind of wanted to, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of stick with the lineage, since the lineage of the original Nosferatu is that it is a remake. Maybe he's just trying to stick to that same lineage and making a remake of potentially the greatest Dracula movie that we've ever gotten. And I know that's up for argument, but, for the sake of this discussion, I'll go with it. So, yeah, this movie is equal parts masterpiece, masterfully done, beautifully edited, beautifully directed, beautifully performed. Just the technical aspects are second to none. It is an absolute triumph when it comes to filmmaking. When it comes to storytelling, that's where, for me, it suffers a little bit. Ultimately, this movie is probably still going to be in my top 10 at the end of the year, only because I use a 100-point system when I'm doing my end-of-the-year watches. And because a lot of the criteria that I use in that 100-point system has to do with the technical filmmaking aspects of it, based on that alone, this is probably going to be in my top 10. Even though I'm slightly disappointed with the story, I'm slightly disappointed with just the fact that Robert didn't make it his own as far as the story goes. He made the movie his own, but not the story that he's telling. And that's what I would have liked to have seen, just something different. Because as I'm sitting in the theater, I'm literally like, oh, okay, there's the scene where, Dracula attacks Lucy. Oh, there's the scene where Lucy's husband or Lucy's beau goes and kills her in her casket. Oh, there's the scene. Like every single scene as it starts in this movie, you're like, oh, it's that scene from Bram Stoker's Dracula. All the way up to the end, which doesn't really follow Bram Stoker. It follows the original Nosferatu for basically the last set piece. But again, it sticks so close to the original content that I almost found myself bored. Yes, I was enthralled with the technical aspects. Like I said, like visually, I'm in awe of what I'm looking at. But the story left me a little flat, and I really wish he would have done something just a little bit different. I mean, I'm pretty sure this is his first remake, right? Yeah, his first 3 movies weren't remakes. So this being his first remake, I just felt like he kept it a little too close to the source material. I would have liked to have seen him go a little bit more overboard with the vampire action. I do like the fact that this movie is solidly Ellen, what's her name? Emily? Ellen, yes. This movie is solidly Ellen's movie, whereas the original Nosferatu from 1922, for the first half of the movie, it's all about Thomas Hutter. And then the second half of the movie, it's all about Ellen. This movie, beginning to end, this is Ellen's movie, and I actually do like that aspect of it because it really drives home the gothic romance element of this film. So, like I said, I know I'm getting long-winded here, so I'm going to cut myself off here and just say, technically, this is a goddamn masterpiece, and it cannot be argued. Storytelling-wise and originality-wise, it's just a little lacking for me. I would have liked to have seen Eggers, this being his first remake, I would have liked to have seen him take a little bit more liberties with the source material, but I'm not necessarily going to complain about it. And like I said, this is still going to end up in my top 10 at the end of the year based solely on its technical prowess. So I'll leave my general thoughts at that for now.
Okay, well, let's go right over to Don for your thoughts on Nosferatu.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll start this. I am not the biggest fan of the original. I'm not really the biggest fan of silent horror in general. I don't really. I appreciate the filmmaking aspects, but I find it very hard to stay engaged in something where if I'm making myself clear, I'm very aware of the fact that it's being faked. Where rather than dropping in and watching people, try to handle their business and, go about their lives, and then something terrible and awful happens to them, and then they have to try to, make their way out of it. They come across this, beast or whatever, and, things go from there. Rather than, doing things that way, we come across a film where we end up, and I'm just watching stuff happen. And I'm not really the biggest fan of that. So I have a hard time getting invested in silent era films. I appreciate them for what they are. I understand their history and their legacy and their heritage. It's just not for me. And I'm not really the biggest fan of all of that. So I don't really like the original that much. Again, I appreciate where it comes from. I understand all of the history and the legacy and everything surrounding it. But I actually much prefer the Herzog remake from 78, 79. Dead somewhere in there. I'm much more a fan of that one. I enjoy the setup. I enjoy the way it looks. You've got Herzog and Kinski, going at each other. You've got, Isabella Johnny, and I forget who plays Van Helsing in that one. But I really wish I would have seen that one a little bit more recently. I actually don't even mind the follow-up to that one, Nosferatu in Venice, I think it's called. Mm-hmm. Although I'm much more aware that the behind the scenes of that one is far more interesting than the film itself. But yeah, other than that, I'm not really the biggest fan of the Nosferatu story. I, fully enjoy the main Dracula story a lot more. Even if that one's, again, even if that one's still got some issues, but either way, I'm not the biggest fan of that. So I really wasn't a big fan of this one coming in, and I didn't really think it was going to be all of that. And I'm kind of proven right. It's a phrase that I've used way too often this year. It's a technically immaculate portrayal of nothing interesting. And that's kind of the way I feel here. Now, I'm going to second Venom on everything he mentioned regarding the technical look of this. I think it looks amazing. It's atmospheric as hell. I mean, the shots of just, the streets of London and where everything takes place. It's creepy. It's chilling. It looks amazing. You really feel as if this is a transportation, you're really transported back in time to, this dark and evil creature stalking the streets of London. And yeah, I absolutely love it. I think it's amazing, and it has just everything that I want in an atmospheric gothic horror movie. Yeah, I agree. It's Bram Stoker's Dracula. I mean, I'm not sure I was really wanting anything else because, again, the original story, there's not much else to it, but yeah, there's just nothing here that really deviates it. I mean, there's enough to like with, the portrayals and all of the, are they going to catch up with him? Are they going to, is he going to get found out? Is there something going on with you know, all of the various, creatures and things that are running loose? It's just not as interesting as I thought it was going to be. And it just falls victim to being way too familiar with, playing by the tropes, whether that's because the source material was playing with the tropes or not. I don't really know, but yeah, it really feels its length is what I'm trying to say. Is that I think this is another one of those where the 2 hours and 2 hours and 20-minute running time, it definitely feels it, and it's not really my kind of thing. I've seen way too many of these things this year. Can we please start getting hour and 40, hour and 50-minute movies again? I mean, those are far more palatable, far more easily digestible. And especially when where all you're doing is you're just waiting for, the big set piece. You're just waiting for the big finale, the, charge into the crypt and taking down this evil being. It's really all you're really waiting for here, because everything is kind of playing by all of the rules. Everything takes itself way too seriously. And it just really ends up kind of feeling like a, warmed over rehash of everything else. And I appreciate it for what it is. I mean, again, I cannot agree, I cannot disagree further on how technically amazing it looks. But yeah, for the most part, it just runs through the gamut, hits all the notes that you're expecting it to, and it doesn't really have much else going around that kind of separates it. So yeah, you're just watching immaculate imagery play around with all of these impressive attributes going on, and nothing else really sticks out. I mean, it's good for what it is, but yeah, it doesn't really do much that I haven't seen in various other adaptations. There's nothing else here going on that really I would say warrants this being a new adaptation. Yeah, another notch in the feather for Skarsgård is the new Christopher Lee, or new Karloff or Cushing or whatever big horror villain that you want to name. But yeah, other than that, there's not much else here. I mean, that's kind of all I got for it. So I mean, we'll wait for the spoiler section, but that's pretty much all I got on my ends.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll be probably echoing a lot of what's already been said. I think the movie looks great. It sounds great. The source material seems like right right up something that would be Eggers' alley. I think he was a great candidate to make it. I will say, like my, I don't really have much criticism of it. I think if you're familiar with the Nosferatu movies, I don't know why I said it kind of weird like that. Nosferatu movies or the source material, like we said at the top of the show, not much is going to surprise you about this movie. I think it's mostly going to be the cinematography, the sound design, and the performances are great. The story is familiar. There's not much surprises. I think if that's one criticism to be had when it comes to Eggers in this, is that he pretty much stuck close to the vest of like what we already know of Nosferatu. I will say William Dafoe was an absolute gem in this, as he tends to be in every Eggers movie he's in. He sometimes steals the show. I will say Lily Rose Depp took a big leap forward in her career probably with this performance. Venom mentioned the performance in Possession. I think Depp even like mentioned that I think she took inspiration from that role to apply to this role. To actually echo a couple things Don said, like I kind of agree that the running time, like I don't really have an issue with movies this long, but I do feel like I've only seen the movie once, so based on the memory, I think pretty much up to when the ship made it back to their village, the movie was kind of flawless. But I think after that, they went back to the well of like premonition nightmares a little too much, to where we were kind of like, and me as a viewer at that point, I was ready like, okay, she's had the premonitions, we know what it's leading to, it's time to get there, and maybe shaving like 15-20 minutes off the running time just to tighten things up. Other than that, though, I really don't have many complaints about this movie. Listening to a lot of people, it's hard to read from like all these people if they have never seen Nosferatu, like any adaptation, and they were expecting like something different. Maybe they have, and they thought Eggers, with the freedom, since even Nosferatu is an unauthorized adaptation in the first place, maybe they thought he would take more creative liberties or more freedom to do more things with the story. Or people just didn't understand that like this isn't like an action vampire type story. It's like more like a twisted gothic romance type thing, like a cursed romance type story. And maybe they didn't understand that going in, because a lot of the reaction about it being like kind of like a slow burn and all that, I'm like, yeah, that's what the story is, if you've ever seen any of the adaptations before. But for me personally, yeah, it was, I think, it just a really well made piece of cinema. It was kind of joy to watch and experience in the theater. Just really immersive. I thought like the gloomy scenes and like fog, and it just looked great. And like I said, up until when the ship kind of came back with our vampire on board in his coffin, I thought it was pretty much flawless up to then. And even then, even with my minor criticisms, I still think it's gonna easily be somewhere in my top 10. I just don't know exactly where. But yeah, other than that, I'd just be repeating a lot, because I feel like the story in this one is the least thing to talk about, just because there's not much new to this adaptation as far as story. So it's like, if you've seen the Nosferatu story before, that's what you're getting here, and it's going to be more about what you thought about the filmmaking itself. So I'll leave it at that for now and kick it back to Venom.
I mean, back to Robert Eggers' like preparation for some of these movies. Like whenever he puts out a new movie, and I do a deep dive and start reading about the research that he did, the lengths that he went to keep the movie authentic. It just proves to me that he legitimately is one of the only auteurs actually still working today. You know, like even guys like Scorsese and, you know, some of the big director names, like they've kind of lost their way a little bit. Whereas Eggers is still fucking, I mean, he's 4 for 4, very obviously. And he just seems to be getting better and better. But I mean, let's talk a little bit more about some of this preparation that he did. I already talked about the Romanian folklore that he researched for this one, which, like I said, included those folk magicians, excuse me, not musicians, folk magicians who animated corpses with demonic forces. The robe, the clothing that Count Orlok is wearing in this movie and multiple scenes in this movie actually comes from history books. If you go online and look up Robert Eggers' research for Nosferatu, you're going to find these pictures where... I mean, the picture that Count Orlok is wearing, the outfit that Count Orlok is wearing when he first meets Thomas Hutter, it literally, he has a drawing from the 1800s of that exact garb. So, like I said, just the research is ridiculous. The carriage in this movie, the carriage that picks up Thomas Hutter at the crossroads as he's on his way to the Carpathian Mountains, it is literally, it's a carriage that Queen Elizabeth gave to the Tsar of Russia around 1600. It's a real fucking carriage, guys. I mean, this is not the kind of preparation that a normal movie director does. I mean, the insurance to use a carriage gifted to the Prince of Russia from Queen Elizabeth, just the insurance to cover that, to use it on film, would be astronomical. And Eggers goes that extra mile. I mean, when I found that out after watching it the first time. So when I went to see it today, actually, for the second time, I made sure to really pay attention to it. And man, the only thing on it that's not authentic are the reliefs on the doors, because obviously this is a gift from Queen Elizabeth, so it had a lot of British markings on it. So he replaced some of the reliefs on there with bas reliefs, which are more authentic to, you know, early to mid 1800s Germany and Romania. So again, just this level of preparation that he does. And then the last thing that I'm going to bring up on his preparation, something I have never, ever in a million years ever heard of. Robert Eggers, first of all, let me caveat this by saying Nosferatu, the original Nosferatu from 1922, is one of Robert Eggers' favorite movies of all time. I'm sure you probably figured that out by now. Well, when he was tasked with making this remake, he wanted to learn more about a lot of the side characters, like more about the Van Helsing type character, more about like the staff, more about the Hardings, you know, things like that. But obviously that material didn't exist. So what does Robert Eggers do? He writes a fucking novella. I'm not exaggerating here, folks. Robert Eggers wrote a goddamn novella of Nosferatu before he ever shot one frame of film. Literally, he wrote an entire novella just so that he could have the backstories on a bunch of these characters. And those backstories don't appear in this movie. They're not for us. It's for him so that he could understand the motivations for some of these side characters that maybe don't get a lot of screen time. So, I mean, I've never even fucking heard of that. A director taking the time to write a novella. That's insane to me. So, yeah, I'm sorry. Robert Eggers, I mean, you are just director number one in the world right now. I'm sorry, Scorsese, De Palma, Coppola, Tarantino, all of the giant names of directing. But Robert Eggers has you all beat when it comes to preparation. And it's a fucking horror director, too. How great is that? That a horror director is trumping all of these greatest directors that have ever lived. So, yeah, again, the theme is there. The technical prowess, second to none. It cannot be touched. The level of preparation, ridiculous. Cannot be touched. And just like I said, I have my shortcomings with it. It seems like at least Don and myself kind of have Don not being much of a fan of the original, whereas I am a gigantic fan of the original. I actually do like silent era horror films, The Phantom Carriage being my favorite silent horror film of all time. I absolutely adore that film. I watch it almost monthly. So despite me and Don having different backgrounds with the original Nosferatu, we still both kind of feel the same way with this one, that, there could have been more. Yeah, not from a technical aspect, of course. I'm not looking for Robert Eggers to spend any more money on set design or special effects or anything like that. It's all about storytelling. I just really wish he would have done a little bit more original things with this story. And that's a minor grievance, because I've already said this movie will be solidly in my top 10. It might be in the top half of my top 10 because of all the technical aspects just being so spot on. Despite my shortcomings with the storytelling and the originality of it, it's still going to be very high up there. And that says a lot. Like this, I'm about to make a bold statement. This is probably my least favorite Robert Eggers movie of the 4 that he's made, and it's still a fucking masterpiece. So, I mean, what else can we say about this man? Gentlemen, anything else you want to add before we get into our very familiar walkthrough that pretty much everyone in the world should be familiar with already?
I was just going to kind of concur with you that the movie is for sure going to be on my top 10. The minor grievances I said are so minor that the only thing that's going to matter for is like maybe where it places in the top 10, but it's still strong enough for me that it's going to be there.
Absolutely. 100%. All right, folks, so let's get into it. I would give you a spoiler warning, but like I said, if you've ever seen the original Nosferatu, Nosferatu the Vampire with Klaus Kinski, or Bram Stoker's Dracula directed by Francis Ford Coppola in 1993, then you've basically seen this movie. You just haven't seen all the cool technical shit. And obviously, I'm not going to be able to describe how amazing this movie looks with my words and a walkthrough. So just realize you're basically getting a Dracula walkthrough here. I mean, it's really, for all intents and purposes, that's basically what we're getting. So our movie opens up with a shot of Ellen. Ellen Hutter is, of course, our main female protagonist of the movie, played by Lily Depp. And she basically is just having like an interaction with Count Orlok, which we later find out was not a dream. Later on in the film, we actually find out that Ellen actually did meet Count Orlok in her youth, and that they actually did have a romantic tryst, which kind of led him to seek her out now, especially because Ellen looks very similar to his, the love of his life. Once again, it's Mina and Lucy all over again with Bram Stoker. So blah, 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 blah. We meet Thomas Hutter, who is, of course, our Jonathan Harker character, played by Nicholas Hall. Played very well by Nicholas Hall, too. Like I said, there's no real bad performances in this movie. There's not even average performances in this movie. These are all pretty stellar. Like, even Aaron Taylor Johnson, who I'm not that big a fan of, especially after seeing Craven, I actually think he did a pretty decent job for the small role that he was given in this one. So, yeah. So, like I said, Nicholas Hall plays Thomas Hutter. He is tasked with going to Romania to see a Count Orlok who wants to buy a piece of property in London. He has specifically asked for an old, slightly dilapidated property, like not something that's beautiful, brand new, but something a little bit more Gothic looking. Of course, it's Count Orlok. He gets what he wants. So, of course, after that, Nicholas, gives the news to Ellen that he's going to be leaving. Of course, Ellen, being somewhat of I don't know if she's an empath or if she's a psychic in this movie, but it's almost like she already knew that Thomas was going to get the job and that he was going to be sent away for a little bit of time. So they add that extra little element there of almost like premonition, if you will. So Ellen goes and stays with the Hardings. That's Aaron Taylor Johnson's character. Now, in the original story, Anna Harding and Friedrich Harding were brother and sister. But did you guys get the impression they were husband and wife in this movie? Right? They were married, right, with kids. I mean, they didn't specifically say it, but I mean, it seems like it was implied to be that.
I think that was a change, yeah.
Yeah, so there you go. One minor change, which is no big deal because Anna Harding is almost doesn't have a role in the original one. Like, she's there by name and we see her once or twice, but she definitely has a bigger role in this movie than she did in the original.
Correct.
So Ellen is going to stay with the Hardings while Thomas goes off to to Count Orlok, to Orlok Castle. They don't mention Wallachia in this, but they do mention Romania and Transylvania. So still basically the same region. They're just not using the actual name of Wallachia, which, I'm not going to get into the history lesson for that one. But anyway, he arrives at the castle. Of course, we get the scene where he meets the local gypsies. They all tell him not to go. As always, we've seen it in every Dracula movie, blah, blah, blah. He ends up getting to the castle and, meeting Count Orlok. Now, one of the things that I do kind of like with this movie is that we don't get to see Count Orlok right away. If you remember in the original Nosferatu, we literally see him right away. As soon as Thomas arrives at the castle, there's Count Orlok waiting for him outside. In this one, everything's done in shadow. Everything, you see how Count Orlok's shadow can kind of separate from his body and go off and do other things. We kind of see elements of that in Bram Stoker's Dracula as well. But we end up, when we finally do see, what's funny is that the first full shot of Count Orlok that we get is him standing there butt naked, which is definitely not something I needed to see. I could have survived 2024 without seeing Romanian vampire penis, but whatever. Funny story about the penis though. Nicholas Hoult actually currently has that prosthetic penis. The penis that we see on Count Orlok is not Bill Skarsgård's actual penis. It's a prosthetic. Apparently, Robert Eggers gifted Nicholas Hoult the prosthetic, and it's literally hanging in Nicholas Holt's house right now. He did a Twitter post, or X, whatever it's called now, this weekend, where he actually shows the framed phallus in a glass box that Robert Eggers gifted him. So I just found that kind of interesting. But yeah, not Bill Skarsgård's penis that we see in this. So ladies, sorry, you're looking at a prosthetic. Anyway, so once we actually get this full image of Count Orlok, we see that he's not nearly as demonic looking or monstrous looking as, Max Schreck or Klaus Kinski. He definitely looks more humanoid, just older. I mean, he looks like he's about 200 or 300 years old, but he looks like just, your basic German or Romanian nobility. He's got that big, thick mustache. He almost looks like Rasputin, except Rasputin had a full beard. So if Rasputin only had a mustache, that's kind of what Count Orlok looks like in this one. And in my words, it doesn't sound flattering. What I'm describing probably doesn't sound ultra flattering, but I did like the design. Like I said, I kind of liken it to how Michael Dougherty slightly changed the design of Krampus in his Krampus movie. Same thing here. He took some artistic liberties with the design, and I'm actually okay with it. Like I said, the fact that Skarsgård is just unrecognizable is just an absolute triumph for this effects team. So, kudos there. So same as, same basic storyline. Eventually, Orlok attacks Thomas in the house, starts draining him of his blood. He starts seeing hallucinations. It almost seems like Count Orlok, his bite is actually causing the plague, because when we finally get the scene of the boat reaching London and all the plague rats come off the boat, suddenly London is infested with the plague. It's almost like Eggers is changing history a little bit and saying that the plague is actually a vampire thing, which I don't mind that too much.
I did really like all the stuff on the ship, and then it just made me think of Voyage of the Dementor, like the movie, because
Yeah, it did. The Last Voyage. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's
yeah,
like you're watching this movie, and even though this movie is visually stunning, it still reminds you of stuff you've already seen. And I'm an originality guy. I like to see people take chances. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'd rather see a director fail at doing something we've never seen before than succeed at doing the same old shit we've already seen. I know it's a weird statement because who wants to watch bad movies? But like I said, I can appreciate when a writer-director takes a chance and does something different. Even if it doesn't work, I can still respect it. So anyway, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, like Mike said, we get that same the last voyage of the Demeter scene where it's the boat going from Romania to London. Same tropes, crew members disappearing, crew members turning almost zombie-like, where they're just kind of standing there and you don't know what the hell they're doing before they eventually just die outright. And then eventually, of course, the ship crashes on the shore of London, near a port in London, and there's no one aboard, no humans whatsoever. The only thing we see is literally hundreds of plague rats just pour out of the boat, which is actually a really cool scene. I'm sure it's done with CG. If I found out that shot wasn't CG, Eggers is even more of a masterful director now. I mean, there were so many rats in that scene, you got to figure it was CG, but if it wasn't, holy shit. Anyway, so again, following the same tropes that we already know, eventually Count Orlok does make it to his castle, does end up making a play for Ellen because, like I said, he's got a past with her that we find out about later in the film. They don't really get into it. All she really says is that she met him when she was younger and that they did make love. And that's pretty much all she really says about it. So it's the type of thing where, Count Orlok has been a part of her life. Even if he's not there physically, he's always been there and on her mind pretty much since that day. So like I said, there's I'm skipping a lot of the cool, scenes of Ellen breaking down and contorting and everything. Like I said, if you've seen a Dracula movie, then you've seen this one. This one just looks a lot nicer. Eventually we get to our big confrontation where, well, first, we get the same thing where Ellen's friend gets attacked, just like in Bram Stoker's Dracula. Mina's friend Lucy, the redhead, ends up getting attacked by Dracula. Same thing here. Best friend gets attacked. She ends up being killed along with both of her children. So Friedrich Harding is now alone. He's lost both of his kids and wife to Count Orlok, and this is after him spending the majority of the movie calling von Frank and Hutter just, insane. And, this is so dumb. This is a pipe dream. This isn't reality, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, he's the one that loses the most of everyone in this movie, probably because of that attitude. But anyway. So eventually, of course, Willem Dafoe playing the Van Helsing character in Nosferatu. He's Eberhard von Franz, and basically the same thing. He studies the occult just like Van Helsing did, and he has maybe not direct experience with Nosferatu. And don't forget, folks, for those of you who aren't aware, Nosferatu is not a name; it is a title. It's basically the Romanian word for the insufferable one. And then after the release of Dracula, Nosferatu just kind of became the German and Romanian word for vampire. So if you ask anyone now, it's basically just the German or Romanian word for vampire, but its roots in archaic Romanian is the insufferable one. So there you go. That's what Nosferatu means. So don't call Count Orlok Nosferatu. As a name, it's like calling Frankenstein Frankenstein. Don't do it. He's Frankenstein's monster. Anyway, I digress. Of course, after killing off all of Harding's family, Von Franz convinces Ellen that she is the key for stopping Count Orlok, that she has to give herself up to him, that it's the only way that they're going to ever be able to take him down, very much like the original, same thing. In the original, Ellen found a book that actually said that the romantic target of a vampire must be utilized in destroying that vampire, whereas in this version, Willem Dafoe tells her flat out, you're the key. You're going to have to be the one that destroys him, blah, blah, blah. So, modernized it a little bit. And then what ends up happening is exactly what ends up happening at the end of the original Nosferatu in 1922. Just before sunrise, Mina... wow, I said Mina. It took me this long to accidentally call someone a Dracula character. It took basically just before the dawn, Ellen calls out to Count Orlok, and obviously Count Orlok can hear her telepathically. So as soon as she calls out to him, he appears... and they both get butt naked because obviously, she's basically saying that she willingly gives herself up to him because that's part of the rules for, this whole situation with Count Orlok and Ellen. Count Orlok can't force her to become a vampire and to be his bride. She has to do it willingly. She has to give herself up to him willingly, and she has to say it out loud. She can't just imply it. So, after verbally saying that, yes, I give myself up to you, we see both of them get butt ass naked. And we start to see Count Orlok drink. Oh, and that's one thing that I haven't brought up yet. The fact that Count Orlok doesn't bite necks. It's, very traditional that the neck is bitten because, of the carotid artery being right there where the neck is, being where most of the blood flow in the body goes through. So the neck is obviously where they bite. Count Orlok in this movie, not just Count Orlok, but even his lackeys, like his wives and everything else, they bite right in the middle of the chest, like right above the heart. Maybe not right above the heart, but slightly off, like slightly off to the right, closer to the center of the chest. So instead of just getting 2 bite marks, 2 puncture holes, you actually get 4 puncture holes because all 4 of the vampire's canines are digging into the body. So I did kind of like that. I thought that was kind of different. Not a major change, obviously, but aesthetically, I thought it was a pleasing change just to be able to see, because then it's easier for people to hide their bite marks, because obviously when it's on the neck, it's a lot harder to hide. You got to wear a scarf or a turtleneck or something. Whereas in this universe, since they attack your chest, you could just wear a standard shirt and it hides the wound. So, interesting. I thought they were going to do something with that. Like they were going to do something with somebody becoming a vampire and hiding their wound, but they didn't go that way. And I'm actually glad because that's kind of lowest common denominator type thing. The idiot who hides that he got bitten by a zombie and it doesn't tell the rest of the group that he got bitten. I'm glad he subverted that trope. So anyway, like I said, with Orlok and Ellen both naked on the bed, Count Orlok bites into her chest, starts draining her blood. And then we see the sun start rising through the window next to the bed. At one point, Orlok actually looks up and realizes that the sun is coming up, and it almost seems like he's probably going to stop drinking and leave, but Mina actually takes her hand and puts it on his face and basically pulls his head back into her chest. So, to kind of egg him on to continue drinking. And basically what happens. The sun ends up coming up completely. Count Orlok, once he realizes that he looks up and sees the sun shining through the window, it's actually kind of an interesting death. It's not a standard death where the vampire either disappears into a mist, into like a smoke mist or something, or, their body kind of breaks down. This one, we see his eyes, the pupils lose all color and they turn into like those classic zombie eyes where they're just whited out. First, the eyes lose all their color and then they start bleeding, like blood starts coming out of the eyes, not pouring out, but, a very slow trickle coming out of both eyes. And then he just falls over dead. And when we see his dead body, he's nothing but skeleton and skin. Like as soon as he died, he lost all his muscle tone. because like I said, don't forget, when we first see him butt naked. And, you know, even though he is tall and thin, he's not skin and bones. You can still tell that there's a build there. But at the end of the film, after the sun takes him out, he's still laying on top of Mina. They are both dead. I said Mina again. God damn it. Ellen. Orlok is laying on top of Ellen. They are both dead. And our movie fades to black. And that's it, folks. That's Nosferatu 2024. Like I said, I didn't go over every single little set piece because we've seen it before. This is probably the easiest walkthrough I've ever had to do because I've been watching Dracula movies my whole damn life. And if I don't know the story of Dracula by now, there's a problem. Now, what's kind of funny is I am glad that we didn't get too much of a backstory on Dracula, because I have this joke where and it's specifically with superhero movies. I don't need to see Batman's origin story anymore. I don't need to see Superman's origin story anymore. And I don't need to see Spider-Man's origin story anymore. And now we're getting another fucking Superman origin story coming out from James Gunn. So it's one of those things when I hate when the same story is just rehashed over and over and over. How many times do I have to watch Bruce Wayne's parents die? How many times do I have to watch Uncle Ben fucking die? So I'm glad that they didn't get how can I put this? Even though this is very similar to Bram Stoker's Dracula, we don't get a lot of the same origin story. You know, how in Bram Stoker's Dracula, he's actually hundreds of years old and he was a warrior fighting for the church and all of this stuff, blah, blah, blah. I'm glad they skipped all that for this one and just started with, you know, this creepy guy in a castle. And that's really all you need to start an atmospheric Gothic masterpiece like this one. So, yeah. What else can I say, folks? Nosferatu, absolute 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100 when it comes to the technical aspects. It's going to be a matter of where you fall on the story and the pacing, like Mike said. But at the same time, Mike has a valid point. If you've ever seen a Nosferatu movie, you know they're slow burns. They're not action-packed vampire movies. This isn't The Lost Boys. This isn't Near Dark. This is a very... This is more similar to A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, a very slow-paced vampire movie with more of a subdued ending than a big, you know, fantastical one with a big set piece. So, yeah, if you know anything about Nosferatu, you know what you're getting into. But the last thing I'm going to say is this is a high recommend from me. Even if you're not the biggest fan of the original Nosferatu story, I highly recommend you see this in theaters. And if possible, find it in IMAX. I watched it in IMAX today, whereas I just watched it on a regular AMC Prime screen on Christmas Day. Holy shit, in IMAX, this thing is stunning. So if you get a chance to see this in theaters, do it. And if you get a chance to see it in IMAX, do it. Trust me, you won't regret it. And that's pretty much all I have for Nosferatu. Mike, back to you.
Yeah, I also think because of the style of the movie, the theater makes the most sense too. Because if you're gonna have a slow burn atmospheric movie, you kind of want to be immersed in the movie. And with watching movies at home with all the built-in distractions you have, it might make watching like this pace, you know, this style pace more difficult to like keep all your focus on. And for me, seeing movies in the theater tends to aid very much keeping 100% of your focus on the movie. So I would almost say that like this is built for the theater because the sound design and the cinematography play huge roles in this style of a movie. But yeah, that said, that's going to wrap up this episode in 2024 Fresh Cuts. It's been a few weeks, I think, or at least a couple weeks since we last recorded. So let's see if there's anything else new for people to listen to from us. So Venom, how about you?
Not a whole lot. We did release the Christmas episode of Creature Comforts. That's Creature Comforts episode number 33, I believe. And on that one, we went back to looking at some Christmas-themed creature features, and we decided to take a look at 2022's The Killing Tree. So check out that episode. That's available as we speak. It's been available since before Christmas. So, and that's pretty much all I have. I've really just been enjoying my Christmas for over the last couple of weeks, doing my rewatches, things like that. So I really haven't had a whole lot of time to podcast. So yeah, it's pretty much just creature comforts for the month of December. And then whenever the main show gets released, I'm not sure if Mike dropped the last episode of the main show or yet not, but I'm sure he'll talk about that when it gets to him. So otherwise, yeah, that's it for
Venom,
me. Just a new episode of Creature Comforts.
I actually think while we were recording this, Lacey posted was it the Chasemas episode where you did all through the house?
Oh, I forgot. Yes. Oh, my God, I'm an asshole. Sorry, Lacey. Yes, I did do an episode of the 12 Days of Chasemas with the Cut to the Chase podcast, Lacey Lou and Dan Chase. We looked at basically my episode was for the Christmas episode of the original Tales from the Crypt series. If you remember, the second episode of that series was the Christmas episode with Larry Drake playing the crazy Santa. So we basically did a review of that. I also went ahead and watched the original version of that segment that came from the 1972 movie Tales from the Crypt that came to us from Amicus. So I talked a little bit about that because Dan and Lacey had actually never seen the original segment. They had only seen the remake segment from the TV series. So I was able to talk a little bit about some of the differences and the fact that in 1972, Joan Collins was ridiculous hot, but I think that's common knowledge by now. So I totally forgot about that. So check that out. Like I said, that is Cut to the Chase, and we looked at Tales from the Crypt. What was the name of that episode? Up on the Housetop or something like that? Oh, All Through the House. All Through the House.
All Through the House, yeah.
Yep, All Through the House. So, yeah. So if you want to hear me talk about the original All Through the House segment from the 1972 Tales from the Crypt movie and the remake episode from the Tales from the Crypt TV series, go ahead and check out the latest episode of Cut to the Chase. And that definitely should be all I have.
All right. How about you, Don?
Yeah, not much. I'm pretty much just like Venom. The only thing I have is the latest episode of Creature Comforts. Yeah, that's pretty much all I've got. So, yeah, back to you.
Okay. And as Venom mentioned, yes, the latest episode of the main show actually is finished and sent off to Phil. So it's just a matter of how soon he gets it posted. The YouTube version will probably be up sometime later this evening or tonight, but definitely by the time people are listening to this episode, it will be available. We were talking Derek's picks, some crazy Japanese horror.
Yeah, Pinocchio.
And when I say that, I don't mean like your typical like ghost J horror. No, this is some wacky Japanese horror.
One of them is kind of a wacky J horror ghost story, but the first one, holy shit. Yeah, folks, if you get a chance to watch Pinocchio 964, I highly recommend it. Just because I want to know if your head explodes like mine did the first time I watched it.
Yeah, and that's pretty much all I got as well. I've been taking this time off. I've actually just kind of tuned out from podcasting overall, except I have the most podcast related stuff I've done is I've listened to a few top 10 shows that I've already hit just because I wanted to see if there's anything potentially list worthy that I missed. So far, not a whole lot. Outside of the shows that like do the thing where they include festival stuff that no one's ever gonna really get a hold of. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, I've kind of run out. There's like a couple that I've heard, not on shows, but just from some of our extended community members that I'm trying to get a hold of. But otherwise, I think what I've seen is pretty much what I'm going to be working with when I put together my list soon. Yeah. But other than that, yep. In about a week and a half from now, we will be recording our top 10 show. And immediately after that, I think there are a couple theatrical horror releases in January this year. So we'll be getting right into Wolfman is one of them. Yup. So it's going to be a busy year right off the bat for horror. So
it's been weird. The last few years, January has been busy. Like, I mean, granted, they're not always the highest quality movies. I mean, we had Night Swim last year.
Yeah. This year was shit. What was it? It took us until May
end of March.
But like March, April, like that was when we finally started getting good stuff.
Literally, the last episode we did in March was for stop motion, and that was the first decent movie that we did in 2024. Crazy.
All right. Well, with that said, we are going to get out of here. Thanks, everyone, for another year of listening to the show. We will be back early 2025 with our top 10 before getting underway a new year of fresh cuts. So thank you, everyone, for listening. Let's say bye to our listeners.
Later.
Even though you didn't go as crazy as I wanted to you to, I still love you, Robert Eggers. You are fucking spectacular.
Oh yeah, the hot rumor is that he's going to be doing a Labyrinth remake, so we'll see if that happens.
Yeah, I don't even know how I feel about that, man. David Bowie's gone, man. How are you going to put David Bowie's crotch in the movie if he's gone? Come on now.
Well, I don't know. Maybe he'll have another synthetic one made. Yeah,
a stunt crotch. Terrible.
Peace.